Cadets. My name is Miranda Reed, and I am a staff member at the Girl Scouts of Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho Council. Today we'll be earning our first aid badge. So when we think about first aid, you want to ask yourself some questions of what do you really know about it? What do you know if you got into an emergency situation when you were out playing with your friends? How would you handle that? So we're going to go over some of those basics today to get you started on down your path of first aid knowledge. What you will need to start with is a journal. This badge is going to be mostly watching videos and taking notes and getting ready for your own adventures. So here's the first aid badge. We're going to learn how to handle emergencies today. So what we're going to do, like I just said, is we're going to go through and watch videos and write notes in your journal. So to show your leader that you earned this badge at the end, you're going to talk to her about all the new skills and what you would do in an emergency situation. We're first going to start with using everything in a first aid kit. Then we're going to go over how to care for younger children. Then we're going to talk about preventing serious outdoor injuries. And then we're going to know the signs of shock and how to treat it. And finally, we're going to prevent and treat injuries due to weather. So to start with, how to use a first aid kit. First aid kits are one of the most important tools that you can have with you when you are doing any activity. They contain anything that you need to treat minor injuries. It's very important that you keep these kits up to date and that they have all the supplies that you need in them. So we're first going to look at creating your own kit, and then step 2, it's going to show you a little bit more about specific items in a first aid kit. So here is an example of a first aid kit. The American Red Cross has standards for what you need in a first aid kit. If you click on this link down in the right corner, it will take you to their website for more information. So I have my first aid kit here. It is pretty old, so on that slide it says that you need to make sure to keep items up to date. So if we go through this first aid kit, we can look at this Neosporin expiration date. We should see that it is not expired. So if it was to be expired, then you would want to go get a new Neosporin to make sure that it will help your injuries as well as it could. So in this first aid kit, this is a basic one that you can buy. It has some important emergency information cards here. These types of first aid kits are really nice because they have the plastic over the top where it will keep your information dry. And then you want to have some gloves because when you're working with blood or different fluids, you want to make sure to keep yourself safe with some gloves. Gauze is super important, and everything else on that list, but a few, there's some pain medication, so having some medication in here that will relieve pain can help a lot. Some eye pads. So just some various odds and ends, obviously some band-aids, and then anything else that you feel necessary to have in your kit. We got some scissors here to help with cutting gauze and different materials, some tweezers. Tweezers are really helpful, especially if you're outside getting stuck in any type of bushes or porcupines or any of those needles that you need to kind of take out. Here's the rest of the stuff that the American Red Cross recommends. All of these are very important, and you should make sure to keep them up to date in your kits. So then over here in the top right corner, we can see some additional items to include. So this is where it comes to personalizing your kits. You want to make sure to have any personal medications. I personally have asthma, so if you have asthma or need an EpiPen, you want to make sure to keep those medications in that first aid kit. Like I showed in my first aid kit, emergency numbers and contact information, any allergy information or allergy pills, and then any other items recommended by your doctor or items that would make you feel safer. And then another important idea, other than checking expiration dates, is making sure that batteries work. There would be nothing worse than needing a flashlight and having all the tools and having a flashlight, but then the batteries don't work. To make sure that you make sure the batteries work and you keep some extra batteries on hand. Now, another thing that's not on this slide, but I'd like to talk about a little bit, is emergency kits. So you should have a first aid kit in your house and in your car. So a lot of you cadets will start driving here in a few years. So it's really important to keep an emergency kit. So I will go ahead and go back to my screen here. Now I will show you, I keep this bag in my car. It has about 3 days worth of freeze-dried food. It has some emergency water, and then it also has a small emergency kit that has bandages and gauze pads, and it has cleaning wipes in it, and then it has this bag of some stuff. So another important thing to keep in your first aid kit is an emergency blanket. These blankets are really great because they are able to keep someone really warm if it's cold outside. So it will help a lot with some things that we talk about later in the presentation with hypothermia and different weather injuries. And then it just has some various odds and ends. It also has a flashlight. It can have different cooking materials, sometimes are very important. I like to keep a compass in there. And so I think that keeping one of these bags with you, while you hopefully never have to use it, will keep you very prepared without going any overboard. We'll just give you the necessities that you need if something was to happen. And then another thing that I like to keep in my car is a car maintenance bag. So this is almost even more important because you will use this. It has jumper cables to help restart your car if it dies. It has a pump to repump your car tires and flares to let people know that you're there, and then those like diamond reflective lights that cops sometimes use when there's accidents that you can put by your car if you need help as well. So that's another really great tool that I suggest that when you get a car, you have one of those as well. Now, as it relates to the normal first aid kit, these first aid kits will become increasingly important when you're working with children or if you want to be a camp counselor. So if you want to go to Girl Scout camp, you're required to carry a first aid kit on you most of the time, and then you'll also have a smaller version of a first aid kit like Band-Aids and some other materials. So it's very important to have all these items in your first aid kit, and at Girl Scout camp you'll even have to write down what is used, so when someone does come to replace everything, they know what is missing and what needs to be replaced. So let's go ahead and get back. So as I was talking about related to working with kids, that is our second slide, how to care for younger children. So I'm sure that a lot of you have thought about babysitting or becoming a camp counselor. These are both areas that some middle school youth age girls can consider. But before becoming a babysitter or a camp counselor, it's incredibly important to know how to care for children. So in this step, we're going to focus on a few steps. We're going to first hear from a medical professional and watch a first aid or babysitting video. So this is where you can watch these videos on your own. The blue links here, you click on those, little link will appear below it. So pretty much the first one will go over having a child and kind of a smaller version of a babysitting course that you would take. It goes over a lot of basic first aid emergencies and then goes over specifically emergencies with infants and younger children. It really helps if you have a baby doll or if you have your own first aid kit at home. That would be really great for you to bring. So a lot of these videos ask you to follow along with them and practice doing gauze. You could practice on one of your parents or a sibling. That would help you a lot learn how to use these materials. And then our next video for the medical professional is going to be an interview of a medical professional talking about her time as a youth counselor. So that will help a lot kind of determine what has to be done. So follow along with her and ask yourself how you would have helped in those situations and what she did a good job in. Make sure to have a journal available to write down any hints or tricks that you want to remember when you start dealing with children. Okay, and then this is some extra fun and training that would be really helpful if you did want to get into babysitting. When you go to a potential parent and you say that you have a Red Cross babysitting course, done, then it will be very beneficial for you, and it teaches you a lot of tools that you'll need. So if you want to use this discount code, it will get you 50% off the babysitting course. You do not need to do this step in order to get the badge though, but this is another way that you could get this badge. Okay, step 3, how to prevent outdoor injuries. Outdoor injuries, especially at Girl Scout camp, are very prevalent and are really important to know how to treat because you might be in various areas that you are not familiar with. So before we start this step, I want you to ask yourself if you've ever seen or been injured in the wilderness. Injuries in the outdoors are incredibly scary. I know that I've had my fair share of injuries. I went with Girl Scouts to Costa Rica my sophomore year of high school, and I ended up spraining my ankle and getting a bunch of bug bites and getting food poisoning. And so a lot of stuff happened, but luckily my instructors knew how to handle those injuries and sicknesses that occurred. So that will be your job. If you were to be a counselor or if you were outside with friends, you'd want to know how to prevent and treat some outdoor injuries. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch an interview of our search rescue team volunteer to help you understand different injuries. This will take some of the stress off of dealing with injuries. Here's where you can watch a video interview and then make sure to also write down important tips and tricks, and then you can even research more injuries that might occur during popular outdoor activities that you enjoy. So if you go skiing, make sure to research some injuries that could occur during skiing and know how to handle them so you know next time you go, you are prepared for an emergency situation. And here is the R.I.C.E technique. This is probably one of the most basic techniques that you can use if someone gets a sprain or twists an ankle or anything like that that's a muscle, bone, or joint injury. So the first step is rest. So you want to rest the area. You don't want to move or straighten it. And this is not only just immediate care, but long-term care as well. So if you were to sprain an ankle, you don't want to go run a mile the next day and wrap it up and run. You don't want to do that because that is not resting it, and you need to make sure that it heals. I know when I was in high school, I sprained my ankle really bad, and I ended up running cross country the next season just a few months later, and an injury that would have gone away in a month lasted 5 months because I didn't rest it. So resting it is definitely one of the most important steps. And then immobilize. So this is to stabilize the injury in the position you found it. So you can splint the injury, you can wrap the injury up with gauze that you might have in your first aid kit. So this is where first aid kits come in handy. And you want to make sure that it is secure. And there's also another saying for this. So R.I.C.E is rest, and then the way that I like to say it is rest, ice, compress, and elevate. But both do the same thing, whether it's immobilized or cold. But for me, it's a lot easier to remember ice and compress than it is immobilized and cold. But either way, it gets the same results. So then the next step, cold. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You're gonna ice your injury. So you're going to apply to the injured area for 20 minutes and then remove it for 20 minutes and then repeat as necessary. You want to make sure that you keep a plastic or cloth between the ice and bare skin. You don't want to damage the skin. And then the last step is to elevate. So this should only be done if it doesn't hurt the person to complete this step. So you want to prop the injured leg or arm on something soft, like a blanket or a pillow. This will reduce the swelling and make the person more comfortable, especially as we'll see later in the slide presentation. If shock occurs, this is one of the steps that should be done as well. Okay, so here is how to identify and treat shock. So when a person is in shock, their body is not getting enough blood flow. This can be caused by several things: heart problems, allergic reactions, or heavy bleeding from an injury. So we're going to first look at the signs of shock and how to treat it, and then we're going to make sure to watch the video in step 5, because the video in step 5 will give you more of a description as well. So here is a quick video on how to treat shock. Click the blue link to learn about it. This video is from the UK, so remember that the emergency numbers are going to be incorrect. Ours is 911, so just keep that. All the information is the same. So pretty much when someone is in shock, we are going to look for some signs, and then this is the position in this slide that you're going to want to put this person in. This position also helps if someone is feeling really lightheaded or passes out. When I gave blood, I passed out, and this is the position that they put me in, and it helped tremendously. So that's another tip on that. And then finally, step 5. This is preventing and treating weather injuries. So weather injuries are very common. I know I've had my fair share of them. If you're in outdoor sports, during middle school and high school, you might see some or be involved in some. There's nothing to worry about as long as you can know the signs of them and prevent them before they occur. Now, some of the most common ones are heat stroke, frostbite, and hypothermia. Heat stroke can easily be prevented by drinking water and staying out of the heat for an extended amount of times. So if you're going to be outside in the heat, I recommend that you make sure to drink enough water and keep some shade. I know that I've had a lot of issues with heat stroke and heat exhaustion and different things related to heat. So let's go ahead and get over to this. So if you click here, that's the video that will take you to learning about weather injuries, and it will also give you another brief overview on the general first aid rules, which will be really helpful, and you can use your gauze pads again in this video. So here's just a few little pictures here of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. So heat stroke is definitely more serious, and you're going to want to call 911 and get some emergency help as well. But there are all steps that you can take before 911 arrives. And then heat exhaustion is a little bit less serious, but it can get worse. So you need to make sure to take the steps to help that. So on the bottom here, you can see that it says to get to a cool shaded area, drink water if conscious, and take a cold shower or use a cold compress. So pretty much just reducing the heat that this person is taking in. And then make sure to know the warning signs of hyperthermia. Hyperthermia is very serious. It can cause confusion, shivering, difficulty speaking, sleepiness, and stiff muscles. Congratulations, you have earned your first aid badge. I hope that this gave you an overview of how you can go about earning your badge by watching some of those videos. I hope those videos were useful. Remember to always be prepared and keep these first aid kits on you, and don't be afraid to solve some of these issues on your own. I know I've been in some situations as a camp counselor. I had a camper fall off of a slide, and he was screaming and crying, and I had to deal with that situation. Just keeping him calm and reassuring him and keeping him in that same position. So there's definitely some steps that you can take, and I know it's scary, but you can do it. So go ahead and share your notes and what you've learned with your leader and show her that you have earned the badge. Great job, cadets. I will see you next time.